Hey my friends, Chris Kummer here from the Anatomy Show, and I have for you today another episode on understanding how our body functions. Actually, not just the anatomy by names, but what does it mean when we hold our posture in one way or the other? How does it influence our internal environment, structure, and function? We'll do that today on the example of the boat pose or navasana. There are, of course, many different versions of navasana or boat pose. But let's see what it means for us when we place our body in one position or the other. What practices are helpful and what can hold us back from making a postural practice like this the most helpful for us. When we take the full posture here, for example, you see there is a relatively straight line through the back, a relatively straight line through the legs. Most of you are probably aware, like, this can be quite some effort. Now, when you look at the internal structure, what really holds our legs, and by the way, also our back, upright or off the ground, so we're not collapsing, those are your hip flexors or the hip flexor muscles. It's a whole group. They're working together to make you look like that. Now, a lot can get in the way where we find the legs start shaking, where we find we can't straighten the legs or the back. So let's see what gets in the way. And what I want to start off with you is really the distinction between what are our hip flexor muscles or the action of our hip flexor muscles. How do we practice boat pose to really work on the hip flexors or allow them to strengthen with practice? I think it's a better way to put it. And part B is then, well, what happens when we change the posture around? How can we make that more hip flexor posture? Or if we don't change it around, for many of us, that means we might just make it more of a leg muscle posture, where the leg muscles, and we'll talk about which ones they are, they're making us work harder, maybe even struggle unnecessarily to the detriment of that posture. Now, if you're one of the fortunate people who can actually hold their legs and their back up at a nice angle without lower back pain, without the knees wanting to bend, without the lower back sagging, then you might have less resistance and relatively sufficient strength to hold that up. There's probably no one watching this who doesn't understand the concept of hamstrings. Hamstrings are the muscles at the back of your legs that stabilize your hips or move your legs. They can do both, and often they're overdoing one or the other. The point I want to make is those of you that feel the hamstrings more often than not, you know that forward bending from the hip or gentle forward bends can be restricted because of the resistance you feel in your hamstrings, right? Now, boat pose, navasana, is a forward bend. We're just sitting on our butt and then lifting the legs, lifting the body, or whatever other way around. That is a forward bend, the same way how we do a half standing forward bend, the same way how we're sitting with our legs straight in front of us. You see, same posture, does a different relationship to gravity. This is already a first challenge. You see, when your body has to hold up the legs and the torso, you're working twice as hard. That's why this posture is so challenging. Now, when your forward bends are already restricted Buy tension in the back of your body. Buy tension in your hamstrings, for example. Then boat pose with the legs straight not only makes you work hard to lift torso and legs up against gravity, but you're also working against the resistance of your legs without the help of your body leaning over forward that we have in standing or seated postures. So gravity does not help you. Gravity in all cases, for boat pose, works against you. That's why this pose can be more challenging. You're still with me? Yeah? Straightening the legs. So if straightening the legs, holding your legs up is fine, then your hip flexors are okay. If the straightening of your legs is a challenge, then that's resistance in the back of the body. Why is that so? Now, when we bend the knees, that releases tension of the back of your body, including your hamstrings. Now, bent knee navasana, bent knee boat pose, helps you to address or work from, with the help of your hip flexors, more, or the hip flexor group as we mentioned earlier, more effectively without the additional strain from the resistance of the back of the body. Does that make sense? If you really want to practice on, I like to use my hip flexors for the effect of supporting my lower back, for the effect of bending at the hip, for the effect of keeping my legs lifted off the ground, then you practice with your knees bent. The degree of how far you bend your legs, that depends on how much resistance you feel. You can bend them all the way. You're still using your hip flexors. Yeah? You will notice the moment if there is any restriction for you in that pose, the moment you start to straighten your legs or aim to straighten your legs, it's not your hip flexors that work harder, but it's the muscles of your thighs that work harder. Yeah? The muscles of the front of your thighs, quadriceps muscles, are the muscles that straighten your knee. They have some other functions too, but in this case, their action is straightening the knee against the resistance of the back of the leg, the hamstrings. You see? So when you're struggling with the straightening of the leg, what you're taking out is the extra work from your leg muscles. The effect on the hip flexors is less strong. There will be some because you're bringing slightly more weight further away from the body. Yeah, so it's a little bit of extra gravitational load on the hip flexors. Think of it that way. You have a heavy weight, you can hold a heavy weight here more easily than holding a heavy weight further out from the body. So the more you straighten your legs from a bent leg, well, it's opposite way now. From a bent leg position, you're straightening your legs in boat pose, the more the weight, some of it, your lower leg doesn't weigh that much, but some of it goes further away from the body, so that does bring a little bit of extra load on your hip flexors, but mainly if there is a resistance, you're challenging your leg muscles, your quadriceps muscles more. Can you see that distinction? Hip flexors bring the thigh and torso together. Thigh muscles, quadriceps, straighten the leg. You have resistance, take that resistance out. You still have your hip flexor action to support your back, to hold your spine long and tall. Not thinking, no slouch, you see? So that was one way to practice. So how about other ways of practicing then? Yeah? Quite often boat pose is practiced with a toe hold. However you want to hold your hands, if you grab it with the fingers around the big toe, if you even use the sides of your hands to hold onto your ankles, sides of your hands, your hands to the sides of your feet, your ankles, or anywhere there, fine. But consider this. All of a sudden, it's your arm muscles, shoulder muscles that hopefully just support, but in many cases also do the work of take over from the action of your hip flexors. You see, normally it's your hip flexors that hold up the legs. All of a sudden, well, we hold on with the toes, we hold on with the hands, then we lift our legs, or then we straighten the legs. Oh, I can do both poses. That might be, for some of you, a little shortcut you can start working with. Like, how would the pose change? Or would the pose change if all of a sudden you let go? You let go of your toes, you let go of your feet, your ankles. Do the legs stay there? Or do the legs go and sink? Yeah, that means your arms have been your supposed hip flexor substitute. Yeah, you don't want that. So start bringing in more tone, more strength, more functionality. Let's call it functionality of your hip flexors to control and support your legs. The use of your fingers or hands to hold up your feet or legs in general is supplementary. It's an extra. It's not a instead of action. You're cheating yourself that way because the hip flexors are part of your core stability. So using your arms, without arms or hands you can't hold your legs, you're cutting yourself short on your core strength. That means internal support for your overall posture. And you will notice that throughout your day, when you move around, when you sit, when you stand, core is not supporting you if this doesn't work without the hands. So take a step back. Yeah? Where do we start then? Let's say I can't hold my legs up at all. Maybe step one would be just to sit with your legs close to your torso. Hug your legs. See if you can find the balance, because without the balance it wouldn't really work. Then you can take maybe one leg up. Just hugging it up so the foot isn't on the floor anymore. So you're starting to build a little bit of balance. Yeah? Once you have that balance, you might even want to hug yourself around the back of your thighs with the lower leg free. Yeah? Then you can play with this idea of, okay, I have the balance, I have that proximity of legs and torso, and then you can either begin straightening your legs. That will work more on the balance of the back of the body, front of the body. Remember how we spoke about the quadriceps hamstrings relationship? And you can also then look at, well, how tightly, how strongly do I need to hold my legs? It might just be that, well, I'll just hold them a little bit. You see? Just like a little bit, and then a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. And all of a sudden you can hold it. Over time, of course. I mean, this is practice. Your muscles will strengthen with practice, right? And then you can add to that, or maybe even intersperse with that, the straightening of the legs. So far, you with me? Try this out if holding your legs up is a challenge. So break it down into little steps and go from balance to holding with bent legs, letting go of one leg, letting go of the other leg, then later straightening it. Unless you're very mobile where the straightening or bending doesn't really make a big difference to you. So you can go straight away from hugging with straight legs and then support it from there. Internally, your legs are held up from your core. Last thought I want to bring in, similar actually to the use of your hands, is the use of belts. When you use a belt, either by holding it in your hands or by wrapping it around your body to support your legs, that can of course be very helpful to becoming familiar with the posture, allowing your tissues, your fascia, your muscles be in a way sort of comfortable in both poses. So they become accustomed to, well, I can actually balance on my butt and hold my legs up. Yeah, it's a good support here. Please do remember, and that's the point I want to make here, belt is great, but belt does not help you strengthen your core. It's good for overall length, comfort, nervous system effects here largely, yeah, but not for strength. So find out for you, observe yourself, maybe take some photos, take a little video of yourself. Where am I at with my own practice? Yeah? Nobody needs to watch. Yeah, just like put your phone there, put a camera on, and then like, what do I look like? Am I sagging in the lower back? Maybe then that means I need to bend my knees so I can use my core muscles, my hip flexor muscles to sit up more long in the back, more supported without that slouch. If it's really just the resistance in the back of your legs and they start screaming, then you use your knees in the bend way first and then slowly approximate that straightening. There it's helpful to add, not substitute, to add the practice with the belt, for example, or holding with your hands, just to get the tissues and your nervous system comfortable with that position and the more or less straighter legs. Many options for you, whether it's this one or this one or that one or this one. Yeah? Try out what works for you. We know our tissues adapt, we know our muscles strengthen, and you'll be able to improve your practice. Now, if you're really interested in what do the hip flexors look like, what else do we have, how do these muscles interact, then take a look at the courses I'm offering, anatomyshow.com/online courses, and there you can see courses that directly look at, well, what's your hip doing, what's your spine doing, what are the thighs and knees doing, and unravels your whole anatomy there, gives again very practical examples. Or if you think like, I want to know the whole lot because I have one continuous body, lots of information, all the different examples, all the different regions of the body are in the Yoga Anatomy Certification course or the whole Yoga Anatomy course. Take a look at those websites, find out what you need, and I'll see you in the courses. Enjoy.